Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior and welcome back to another Mortal Kombat 11 video. Now in today's topic and discussion, I wanted to give you all a breakdown and analysis of the Ash Williams situation for Mortal Kombat 11. This somewhat drama surrounding him has been going on since the Kombat Pack leak pre-release, and his apparent dismissal has raised a lot of questions. So in today's video, we will be talking about the leak, why does Ash Williams work as a character for the Kombat Pack, what exactly is going on with his licensing, and why he has been possibly eluding Mortal Kombat 11 as DLC. Now before we progress deeper into the video, I do wish to reinforce this point. What I'm saying here isn't solid in stone. This is all theoretical on my behalf, but I have done some homework and I'll be putting some facts together of what we know about the current situation and what exactly is going on here. Now that being said, let me first of all give you all a synopsis of Ash Williams as a character, who he's all about and what he's all about. Now Ash Williams derives from the Evil Dead series, an old school horror film that was put together by none other than horror legend Sam Raimi. Although it had a laughable small budget, it was a smash hit and helped propel Ash into the horror genre. But what's quite interesting here is that Ash wasn't really Ash up until Evil Dead 2. Allow me to elaborate. You see, in the first film, Ash was amongst a group of friends when they entered the dreaded cabin and found the Necronomicon, that being the Book of the Dead. Ash narrowly survived the encounter, being forced to fight off and kill his own friend. Now in this version of Ash as a character, he just seemed like a normal guy for the most part, and later, due to the possessions that his friends had undergone, he was kind of a fish out of water, as he was understandably unprepared, and thus does show a lot of fear in the first film. Ash for the most part is a bit of a coward, that's at least until he starts fighting back and does become the sole survivor of his group. Now the Evil Dead 2, which came out in 1987, is where things really did take a turn. Unlike its predecessor, which was a truly horrific and brutal film, its sequel took on more of a comedic tone and added a lot of slapstick humor. On top of this, due to licensing issues that Raimi had with New Line trying to obtain rights to the first film, he would somewhat recreate the events of the first movie within the first 15 minutes, but there were some tweaks and alterations. In this interpretation, it was just Ash and his girlfriend, but events would transpire in the same way. Now due to this effectively serving as a bit of a reboot, Ash was given a makeover. Being far more sharp-tongued and quick-witted, this incarnation of the character was definitely a step up from his Evil Dead 1 counterpart, showing off way more of his personality, and there was this odd, noble yet sleazy charm to the character, making him pretty damn likable. What really helped Ash become an icon by the end of this film is when he was forced to cut off his own hand and replace it with a chainsaw, and of course, who could forget the infamous sawn-off shotgun.
This is my boomstick!
From here, Ash would become an icon in the series, but what exactly happened to Ash after this point? Well, Ash got a sequel to the Evil Dead 2, that being Army of Darkness. However, this would be the last time Bruce Campbell would portray the character in the main role on the big screen. From here, Ash kind of faded from pop culture a bit, as the Evil Dead wouldn't get another film in the series till much later down the line. Now, in 2013, we finally got some more Evil Dead. This 2013 film would function as a reboot and a sequel to that of the original. However, unlike Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, this film was much more in line with that of the first film, being a brutal horror gore fest, and the film would focus on a new group of characters, as they would serve to progress the main plot. Now Bruce Campbell did make a very brief cameo in this film, at least in the after credit sequence, but other than that he had no involvement in the main plot. Now after the positive reception the reboot had gotten, Campbell and Raimi would team up once again to continue Ash's story. This series would be put together by Stars and be known as Ash vs. the Evil Dead. Now this show received a lot of positive praise and did go on for about 3 seasons before being cancelled due to lack of viewership. Upon the end of the series, Campbell decided that it was finally time for him to walk away from the role, as he felt like he could do all he could with the character and it was time for him to put Ash to rest. So the big question is now, what exactly happens from here on out? Well, although Bruce Campbell himself isn't playing the character on the big screen, he does continue to work and be a part of the Evil Dead series. You see, during the course and lifespan of Ash vs. the Evil Dead, Bruce Campbell was always in the talks with Sam Raimi about bringing another Evil Dead to the big screen, and the original idea was to have a movie that helped allow Ash to cross over with the survivor Mia from the Evil Dead reboot. But due to the fact that Bruce wished to step away from the role, the idea of this was scrapped. But as of October 2019, we learned from Raimi himself at New York Comic-Con that Bruce Campbell would be involved in a new Evil Dead film. However, he would not be portraying Ash or anyone on camera. Bruce would somewhat take a back seat and be a producer for the film. You see, although Campbell is no longer portraying the character on the big screen, he's more than happy to portray the character through video games or other forms of media. The most recent example, in fact, is him portraying Ash Williams in Dead by Daylight, and his inclusion as DLC was just last year, 2019. So the license is definitely being passed around, and looks like Bruce is still very happy to portray the character in game. So in saying this, does Ash Williams really fit in Mortal Kombat 11? What boxes does he tick to make the cut? Well, as I mentioned about 2 weeks back, with the somewhat RoboCop tease we've had, I also recommend you check out that video, there seems to be a somewhat trend amongst guest characters. You see, for Mortal Kombat X's DLC, although it focused on the horror genre as a whole, there were characters that fit certain subgenres in it. Jason and Leatherface of course covered the slasher side of things, whilst Predator and Alien covered the sci-fi horror spectrum of the genre. Now in Mortal Kombat 11, it looks like a similar mindset has been applied here. The first one is R-rated comic book characters, because of course we do have the inclusion of the Joker and Spawn, but for the more cinematic-esque ones, we do have the inclusion of Terminator and possibly RoboCop. Now although I can't confirm that RoboCop is in the game, if he were to be in the game hypothetically, it sets a trend for these guest characters being icons of cinema to come from the 1980s, with Terminator having come out in 1985, RoboCop coming out in 1987, and The Evil Dead that came out in 1981. So I definitely feel like Ash Williams falls into this trend. Now one of the big things we must talk about here is cross promotion. You see, a big thing with guest characters being put in MK games is how they benefit both sides, as it serves as exposure for different audiences. A good example of that most recently is Terminator's inclusion in the Kombat Pack, as it did tie into Terminator Dark Fate. But what of Ash Williams? Well, as I briefly had mentioned earlier, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell are working on another movie. So to somewhat promote and gain success on both sides here, I could definitely see Ash being viable as DLC. Now although it is super early on in the film's development, this same mindset was in fact applied to Predator and Jason, as Jason, who appeared in MKX, was in fact going to have another Friday the 13th film before it was unfortunately scrapped. Predator was put into the game, but we didn't get another Predator film till 3 years later after Mortal Kombat X's release. So they will purposely put in characters far earlier than their movie release counterparts. Again, it's another way of cross promotion. So now what's the deal with the Kombat Pack? As you see, there was a bit of promotional material that had come out with Ash's name on the bottom of the banner, and it does say the following: Ash character from Army of Darkness is licensed by Metro Golden Wind Mare Studio, incorporated Army of Darkness trademark and 1993 Orion Pictures. Now this does of course show the licensing for the character, and does seem to be legit, as it does show the other licensing for the Joker as well as Spawn. So the question is, where was Ash for Kombat Pack 1? As it seems like he was all good and ready to go for it. Well, I think there's a lot more going on here than just that. Let's quickly touch on something else before we get to it. You see, the Kombat Pack is one of those big reveals that we were all expecting to see pre-release, as religiously, it's typical of NRS to drop a trailer before the game comes out to give us a rough idea of who will be in the Kombat Pack. For Mortal Kombat X, we had the reveal of Tanya, Tremor, Jason, and Predator, and even for Injustice 2, we had the reveal of Starfire, Sub-Zero, and Red Hood. But for Mortal Kombat 11, we didn't get a trailer for the game till 5 months post-launch. So what's up with that? Well, personally, I believe there has been a licensing issue. You see, a studio has a set amount of time when they have ownership of a character to use them or involve them in a game. This information was revealed from an interview that Todd Mcfarlane had had. Although we do not know the finer detail, it did give us an idea of how these licenses are handled. Also, to add some more substance to this information, this was when he was asked about Spawn's possible inclusion in Mortal Kombat or Injustice. So he elaborated on the license and how it did have a time to expire after a set date. But what he didn't mention is whether or not this licensing could be renewed, which is why I believe Spawn has made it into Mortal Kombat 11 and Ash Williams didn't make the cut for Kombat Pack 1. Now, though it might seem a little bit silly with how much licensing plays a part in this, we must take into account two other things. The first one is the Kombat Pack trailer. During its reveal, I'm pretty sure everyone unanimously agreed that the Joker easily looked the most unpolished out of all of the characters here. So it's believed that he was brought forward from his original release date in order to fill Ash's spot. Because if we compare the older looking Joker to the game looking Joker, there's definitely a lot of differences in the two. And finally, Firstly, let's quickly go back to licensing. It's extremely important for a game to obtain this in order to use these characters. If the license is held by one party, then the character can be used within the game. One example of this in fact falling apart is most recently with Mortal Kombat 9, because for those of you who don't know, recently Mortal Kombat 9 was pulled off Steam stores. Although we don't know the main reason as to why this was done, we do suspect it was due to the inclusion of Freddy Krueger, as recently ownership of the character has fallen back into the hands of Craven Estate. So we believe because of this, MK9 was pulled down. So now that we're coming to the somewhat conclusion of this, why wasn't Ash involved in Kombat Pack 1? Well, I personally believe that it's due to the expiration date that each of these guest characters have. That is more than likely the main reason as to why he hasn't made the cut here. If the use of the character has expired, then Warner and NRS aren't actually allowed to use that character in game. Yes, he was teased in Shang Tsung's trailer. Yes, there was more than likely plans for him to in fact make Kombat Pack 1, but at the end of the day, if the licensing is gone, then use of the character isn't possible, at least unless it is renewed, which is what I suspect had happened with Spawn, because we knew for a fact very early on that Todd Mcfarlane was interested in having Spawn be put into Mortal Kombat, but this didn't happen till much later down the line from the interview I had mentioned. So I definitely think it's ownership and licensing of Ash Williams that has ultimately prevented him from making the cut into Kombat Pack 1. But please do remember, this is all a theory. I've simply cobbled together all the information that we've previously learned about with the Kombat Pack, as well as that of older games, with what could possibly be going on with Ash Williams here. Ash is a hot topic in the community right now, and it raises a lot of questions than answers. So hopefully for me putting together this video, you've been able to cobble together at least some form of idea of what exactly is happening with him here, because for the most part, even I don't know. I'm simply trying to form a picture out of the jigsaw pieces we do have on the table, but right now a few pieces are missing. But anyway guys, this pretty much sums up everything I did wish to say about Ash Williams' disappearance for Kombat Pack 1. I hope you have enjoyed this video and learnt more by doing so. I have more videos on the way very soon, so please do keep an eye out. So before this video wraps up, if possible, let's try getting it to about 500 likes, and don't forget to tick that bell, as it will keep you up to date with everything that's going on with the channel. So now, as always, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I'll see you all next time.